Roosevelt Vanderbilt logo. Diamond dedication logo. Franklin Roosevelt quote from 1920.
Hello and welcome. My name is Amy Bracewell, and it is my privilege to serve as the superintendent at the Roosevelt and Vanderbilt National Historic Sites in Hyde Park, New York. This year we are celebrating a momentous occasion. 75 years ago, the home of Franklin D. Roosevelt National Historic Site was dedicated and opened to the public. While we would love to celebrate with all of you here in person, it is not possible to do so. We hope that you enjoy our virtual programming and celebrate with us virtually. Through oral histories and historic videos, you'll hear the challenges of preparing the house for this occasion. You'll hear Eleanor Roosevelt's dedication speech and the Secretary of Interior, J.A. Krug, accepting the gift on behalf of the American people. You'll also hear contemporary well wishes and congratulations from a variety of people across the nation. We look forward to hosting you in person when it is safe to do so, and I hope that you enjoy our virtual celebration. Thank you.
Welcome to Springwood, ladies and gentlemen.
David Roosevelt.
Gosh, if my grandfather had had different plans, I might be living here today. But he gave it to you. So, welcome home, folks.
Hello. I'm standing on the porch of FDR's gift to you, the American people.
Supervisory Park Ranger.
FDR loved this place. This was always home to him, even though he lived in many places throughout his life. He once said to his friends and neighbors, "My heart has always been here, it always will be." It was where he was born and grew up to be the man who became the 32nd President of the United States. Now, FDR was always interested in presidential history. He wondered what influenced the men who led this nation. And he, in fact, was influenced growing up here. This was a working farm. And so he developed a real affinity toward farmers. When he became president, one of the first New Deal programs he started was the Agricultural Adjustment Act that helped struggling farmers during the years of the Great Depression. His father taught him a love of trees and their importance to the environment. So another New Deal program FDR started was the Civilian Conservation Corps, where they hired young people to plant trees nationwide. When he was president, FDR decided that he would eventually like to give his house to the federal government and to the National Park Service. He wanted folks like you to come here and learn about him, not just as President of the United States, but as a person. He chose the National Park Service because he loved the agency. He once said, "There's nothing so American as our national parks." In December of 1943, he gave the house and 33 acres of land to the National Park Service. And in January of 1944, it was designated as a National Historic Site, but not before they came up with a name for it. Now, Secretary of the Interior, Harold Ickes, came up with several ideas. One was the Roosevelt Estate National Historic Site. The other was the Roosevelt Mansion National Historic Site. FDR hated both of those. To him, this was never a mansion, nor was it an estate. It was his home. So Secretary Ickes came up with another idea, the Franklin D. Roosevelt Home National Historic Site. Well, FDR thought that was worse than the others. He said it sounded like a retirement home for old politicians. So he turned it around, and it became the home of Franklin D. Roosevelt National Historic Site. Now, FDR passed away on April 12, 1945, and in November of 1945, Eleanor Roosevelt and the children gave the place over to the National Park Service. And they could have lived here for their lifetimes, but they chose instead to turn it right over to the park according to FDR's wishes. The very first thing the National Park Service did was to hire a historian, whose name
Frederick
was
Rath in front of
Frederick
Bird
L.
Case.
Rath, Jr. And he started in January of 1946.
Daisy
and he
Suckley
had a
and Other Woman in
monumental
Springwood.
task ahead of him. In 3 months, he had to have the house ready to be
Robert
open to the
McGowie in
public.
FDR's
That meant
bedroom.
he had to make sure everything was in place inside the house. He had
State
to hire
workers
people
looking at portrait of FDR.
and train them. And also, he had to
Frederick
prepare
Rath,
for
Robert
a special
McGowie, and
ceremony
Daisy Suckley
for the
in bedroom.
dedication of the site that would be held on April 12,
Daisy
1946,
Suckley and woman
which
in
would
dining
include
room.
Eleanor Roosevelt, Harry Truman, and various
Studio lights
dignitaries.
in living room.
So here is Mr. Rath to tell you
3 people
all
on
about
Roosevelt
the
front steps.
challenges he faced.
When I was released by the Army late in the fall of 1945,
Video of Frederick Rath oral histories.
and was waiting for final word as to when I should report to Hyde Park. They finally suggested that the appointment had gone through for me as historian, and I should come to the Vanderbilt Mansion, the office of George A. Palmer, the superintendent, early in January. There was a great deal of work to be done. George Palmer had done some of the groundwork, but he was overworked, and I would suggest that we were overworked for the next 2-3 years. We did a great deal of discussing of what we had to do and how quickly we had to do it. The fact was that we were confronted suddenly with opening the home on April 12th of that year, 1946. There was an enormous amount of work to be done. I was given a staff of 13 ex-GIs. However, we were understaffed, as it turned out, and we had to try to do a number of things. I turned out rather quickly a training manual for the guides. Every day was a busy day, and that included most weekends for me and for George Palmer. What I had to try to do for the guides was to compress the history into tiny bits of information which they could pass along. I've often remarked that after a due period, I would be able to list the 50 most asked questions. Well, we had a chance to go around with various people during this period when it was necessary, and in due course I came to understand what some of the 50 most asked questions would be. Later we improved on that, changed the manual perhaps, but what we had to do was not only to do that training, but we also had to put the home into a condition that would enable us to show visitors around. We got a good deal of help in that from Ned Burns, who was head of the Museum Division of the National Park Service. He was one of the specialists who came up, and he immediately saw what the problems would be. Ned Burns was the person who taught me to be aware of the lived-in look instead of the died-in look. And it wasn't until a great deal later that I discovered that that FDR himself had made a notation to the effect that he would like to have the house look as if it were lived in. Here at Hyde Park, at FDR's home, we got help from a splendid source. Eleanor Roosevelt quickly identified herself, and we became friends. We became friends because she turned to me and she said, "Would you like to have me go around the house with you?" The answer to that, of course, was yes. But I was with her solo, and we simply discussed the things that we were looking at so that I would be able to do the labels for the home. All I know is that it established the fact that Eleanor Roosevelt, one of the most unusual women I would meet in my entire career, was personally very interested in seeing this experiment in presentation succeed. On April 12th of 1946, like it or not, we had a ceremony to which not only Harry Truman, as President of the United States, came, but many principals, including Supreme Court justices and so forth. And we set all of this up. I can't for the life of me remember what Harry Truman said on that day, but I think I'll never forget how sharply Mrs. Roosevelt defined and gave meaning to that home and what it should be for the American people and what it was for her husband and her family. Her statement is available in many forms. It became the master label for the operation of the home.
1 year ago today, on April 12, 1945, this great nation was shaken to its very foundation stones with the news that its great wartime leader and president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was dead. Today, his successor, President Harry S. Truman, has journeyed to the picturesque village of Hyde Park, New York, to pay homage, with the rest of America, and to dedicate as a national shrine the house, gardens, and countryside which were home to Franklin D. Roosevelt. Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt will today formally present to Interior Secretary J.A. Krug 33 acres of the famous Roosevelt estate, including the century-old Rose Garden wherein the late president was laid to rest.
I have the honor to
Eleanor
present
Roosevelt and others at
Mrs. Franklin D. Roosevelt, who will deliver the presentation address.
Secretary,
Eleanor Roosevelt at podium.
distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. This is the house in which my husband was born and brought up. It has undergone some changes since the days when he first saw the light of day, but they were changes made to meet the needs of the growing family and his own taste.
Eleanor Roosevelt at podium.
He always felt that this was his home, and he loved the house and the view,
Panorama of
the woods, special trees, the particular spots where he played as a child, or where he had ridden his horse
FDR
as a boy and a man, or where he later drove his car when he was no longer able to ride.
FDR in automobile.
Life here had always a healing quality for him.
FDR and Eleanor on South.
Here he spent the summer, 9 months after he had infantile paralysis, and laboriously worked to regain some measure of strength which would enable him to get about.
Modern panorama.
As he gained physically, the healing of the spirit went forward at the same time. Since this is the first anniversary of my husband's death, I am happy to have it connected with something which will always be as alive as the dedication of this house to the people of the United States. My husband's spirit will live in this house, in the library and in the quiet garden, inside the hedge, where he wished his body to lie. It is his life and his character and his personality which will live with us and which will endure and be imparted to those who come to see the surroundings in which he grew to maturity.
Crowd shot at
It is
dedication.
with pleasure that our children and I see this house dedicated to the people and open to them.
Crowd in front of Springwood at
It
dedication.
was the people, all of the people of this country and of the world, whom my husband loved and kept constantly in his mind and
Group
heart.
of press at
He
dedication.
would want them to enjoy themselves in these surroundings and to draw from them rest and peace and strength as he did all the days of his life.
Dignitaries on Springwood porch.
Mr. President, I am happy that you could be with us on this occasion.
Eleanor Roosevelt at podium.
And to you, Mr. Secretary, I now turn
Aerial
over
shot at
the
Springwood.
full possession of the land, the house with its contents, the other buildings, which my husband willed
Eleanor
to
Roosevelt
the
at podium.
people of the United States.
Mr. President,
Secretary J.A. Krug.
Mrs.
at podium.
Roosevelt, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the government of the United States, it is my privilege to accept the guardianship of this beautiful place, the home of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, his generous gift to the people of the nation. This is Hyde Park. Here, President Roosevelt was born.
Franklin Roosevelt and his mother.
Here he lived. Here is his grave.
Roosevelt Gravesite.
This tranquil Hudson River landscape,
Fall picture at South.
these majestic trees and rolling acres, inspired his deep love of the natural scene.
J.A. Krug at
The
podium.
books and papers collected here informed his quick intelligence. This lovely river valley, so deep in the traditions of America, deepened his sense of history and sharpened his vision of his country's future. From these vistas of serenity and peace, he renewed the courage and refreshed the strength
J.A. Krug at
that
podium.
led his country through its darkest years. By his life, he made the name of Hyde Park a symbol to freedom-loving peoples of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
President Truman.
Mrs. Roosevelt, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary,
Truman at podium with crowd.
distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We stand in reverence at this hallowed spot consecrated to the memory of a great American who has become a great citizen of the world. We stand here in solemn tribute. All over the globe, plain people join with leaders and statesmen in recognition that it was largely because of him that civilization has survived. Only history can do him full justice. Here, where he was born, in the spot which he loved best in the world, he is now at rest. We shall not soon see his like again. Miss Marian Anderson will now sing the national anthem.
Marian Anderson, Reverend Kidd, Newton Drury, and Eleanor Roosevelt.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming stripes and bright stars through the perilous flight. O'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, unbroken through from bursting in air, came through the night, but our flag was still there. Oh, sailors, that star-spangled banner yet wave, o'er the land of the brave, on the home of the brave.
We have brought you a special broadcast from Hyde Park, New York, during which Mrs. Franklin Delano Roosevelt turned over to the people of the United States on this first anniversary of the late president's passing, the house, grounds, and library, his home.
Line waiting to get
The program featured the President of the United States, Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt, Secretary of the Interior J.A. Krug, Mr. Newton B. Drury, Director of the National Park Service, and Miss Marian Anderson, who sang the national anthem.
crowd in Roosevelt.
Now the many dignitaries and special guests will go into the big house, and starting tomorrow, the estate of Franklin Delano Roosevelt will be open to the public. That concludes our broadcast from here this afternoon. We return you to New York.
Credits.
Congratulations on your
Children.
75th anniversary.
Wishing our
Town
big
Supervisor
home and
Aileen
all
Moore.
involved a very happy 75th anniversary.
It's an honor to be part of the
Archivist David
75th
Ferrari.
anniversary, marking the start of an important and historic partnership.
Lindbergh Johnson Robb.
And I want to say
Historian
happy
Douglas Brinkley.
75th birthday to the Franklin D. Roosevelt National Historic
I
Site.
wish to
New
congratulate
York
the
State
Franklin D.
Assembly member
Roosevelt
D.B.
National
Barrett.
Historic Site on its 75th anniversary.
That's why I'm delighted
Chuck
to offer
Kramer.
my sincerest congratulations to the National Park Service on the 75th anniversary of the dedication of FDR's home as a National Historic Site.
It is an honor to be a part of the 75th
Library
anniversary of
Director
the
Paul
opening
Sparrow.
of the home of Franklin Roosevelt National Historic Site.
And certainly as a
County
Dutchess
Executive
County
Mark
resident, we
Molinaro.
celebrate his lasting legacy, his leadership, and 75 years of his home as a national landmark.
I want to wish a very
Horticulturist
happy
Karen Holt.
75th anniversary to the home of FDR National Historic Site.
I am thrilled that
Author
it is
Jeffrey Ward.
the 75th anniversary. Happy anniversary, Springwood.
I congratulate and
Kevin
thank
Burke.
the National Park Service on 75 years as the stewards of this special place.
Congratulations on
Elaine
celebrating 75 wonderful years.
Celebrate 75
State Senator Sue Serino.
incredible years.
The
Roosevelt
family
granddaughter
thanks the
Anna
National
Eleanor
Park
Roosevelt.
Service for their care for the home in the beautiful Hudson River Valley that was so dear to our grandfather. We enjoy visiting there, right along with everyone else.
National Park Service, Arrowhead.